So Mike, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it. I think you can tell all of the notes I've made on your book. Matter of fact, I can show you every single one of your books that I've made notes on. There's something about the way you write that is so specific and detailed that you're handing us small business people, real solid advice. Yep. Talk a little bit about how you write, because it is unique.
Yeah, it's definitely a different style, and I really appreciate that. The way I write is rooted in the fact that every book I've written, admittedly, is a challenge I have or have had in my own businesses, and I wish I was walked through the steps. I believe, dollar for dollar, there is no more valuable asset than a book. You can go through coaching, you can go through these great programs, but dollar for dollar, a book has the download of someone's knowledge already sequenced for you. And it's my responsibility as an author to make it practical and doable. And so one of the tests we do is I own a few businesses. As I'm writing a book, I'll give that book or the manuscript to the business and say, do this. And they become the guinea pig.
So,
and if it doesn't work,
Mike, let's take a break and we'll come back and we're going to pick this back up again. We'll try to get back on track. We're talking to Mike Mikowicz. He is absolutely number one small business author that I have read. Thank you so much. Morning, your business matters. And if it's Friday morning, we are interviewing people that inspire, inform, and entertain me. And today is no exception, because Mike Mikowicz is who we've got on the Zoom live. So if you go to the book, you can see him live, and also live on the air. And Mike Mikowicz, thank you so much, sir. We really do appreciate you getting up early in the morning to talk with us, buddy.
Oh, it's a joy to be with you guys. So thanks for having me, Joe.
So we have him on live Zoom. We've got the audio and video working for us. So here's what I want to do. We had a little snafu at the beginning of the show. I had this whole list of things I wanted to ask you, right? So I don't know that I'm going to be able to do that. But here's the one question that I wanted to ask you. Who is Mike Mikowicz, right? Because when I first read, I think the first book that I read of yours was Profit First. I kind of wanted to know, who is this dude, right? Like, why am I listening to him? Why is he connecting with me through these books? Tell me, you don't have to go back to 1963, but kind of give me a little bit about who Mike is.
Well, we'll start with 1971 instead. I'm an entrepreneur, and I've grown some businesses with some success, and sold some. I was in the tech space and so forth, and I've had cataclysmic failure. I had one business that was just a total atrocity. But what was interesting is throughout that journey, even the good businesses I sold, I realized I wasn't running properly. Well, I had my wake-up call of the century. So this date is important. It was 2008, February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. My business atrocity had collapsed. I was an angel investor. I had no idea what I was doing. I called myself the angel of death, honestly. I was so bad at it. I lost everything, and we were on the verge of losing our house, which we did. And I had to face my family and say it was all gone. My daughter, she was 9 years old at the time, grabbed her piggy bank and she ran down the steps and she gave it to me. She said, "Daddy, I'll start supporting our family because you can't do it anymore." And I still get emotional about that. It was a wake-up call I needed. I was ashamed. And that point forward, well, it wasn't like that point forward I started becoming an author. That was the turning point. It was years later in reflection that was the seed. I actually went through depression for 2 years, started drinking really hard, not doing good things. But then I started coming out of that and decided I'm going to devote myself to fixing everything I don't know about entrepreneurship for myself and anyone that is willing to listen. So that's who I am, and that's why I write about entrepreneurship and why I'm so passionate about it.
And it is the genuine nature of the way that you write, because let me tell you something. You do not become self-employed entrepreneur without making mistakes, right? Anybody that says they haven't made a mistake, that's just not genuine, right? And so I think that's why your books are so endearing to me, because you tell me when it works, you tell me when it doesn't work.
Yeah, there's a saying, you learn through the burn. There's truth, but I'll tell you, I don't like being burned, and I don't wish that upon anybody. So if we can learn through other people's experience and deploy in our business, I think that's the better path. And so that's what I try to do with my books, to be of service to others. And one of the privileges as an author, I get to interview tons of business owners, including Jesse Cole, who you were mentioning earlier, and learn from their mistakes and hopefully have a easier, better path for myself.
Yeah, it's been the biggest thing with running a podcast for years. I get to have direct access to other people that are doing things correctly and made the mistakes and have learned from it. And so just like Mike, what you're saying through your writing process, when you get access to those people, it's a cheat code, right? You get to take some of that and apply it to your own life.
And it's probably
it totally is.
Yeah, go right ahead, Mike.
Well, I was going to first say, Joe, with the books in front of you, that is the sexiest photograph ever.
Yeah.
So make sure you get a picture of that. All books around you. Learning from other people's mistakes is the cheat code or shortcut to success. The reality is we still have to experience some of the burn. Sometimes the only way to learn is through pain. So what I try to teach in the books is here's methods to try, but some of them I don't guarantee. Like even with Profit First, while it's been very successful for most businesses, I don't guarantee it. And I anticipate that some people will try it out and it'll hurt or something won't work. But I think it also gives them the freedom to understand there's going to be pain. Just one little asterisk on this. There's a popular book by Dan and Chip Heath called Decisive. In the book, they talk about the necessity for emotional inoculations. Inoculations where you take a little crippled version of a virus so you don't get the big version. Well, with teaching business methods, if people experience a little bit of the pain on their own, then they'll more likely to avoid the big pain in the future because they've been inoculated through that. That's why I try to teach the books is here's the pain that may happen. So just be prepared for it. So they're much more protected if it does happen.
Yeah, but Mike, what you also do is you give me this roadmap, this detail. I'm a bullet point kind of guy, right? And so you give me these bullet points. Okay, here's the problem I want you to be careful of, and now here's the 4 things I want you to do, right? And so that's what I like about your writing. There's something you talk about in most of your books and your speeches, which is an entrepreneurial poverty. Now, most people that I know think if you're self-employed, oh wow, you're just raking in the money, right? Well, you and I know there's a lot of poverty for 2-3 years until it actually starts to work for you. Can you talk about that entrepreneur? You want to alleviate entrepreneur poverty, which really means you want to educate me before I get started. That's how I interpret that.
That's right. And for some people, it's 2-3 years. For others, sadly, it's 2-3 decades. It can go on into perpetuity. What entrepreneurial poverty is, and I've had the privilege of now interviewing tons of groups, Joe, around this. I ask people, when you started your business, what was the reasons to do it? And the top contenders are always financial freedom and personal freedom. I want to not worry about bills, and I want to be able to do what I want, when I want.
Yep.
And I say, okay, that's why you started your business. What's the reality? No financial freedom. These businesses are in debt and they're struggling. They're surviving check by check, and no personal freedom. The owner is working constantly. So there's this irony that our vision is totally the opposite of our reality. And that gap is what I call entrepreneurial poverty. The reality is most small businesses are there, but we also can't speak about it. Because if I go to my client and say, oh, I am struggling to make any money. I'm not profitable. I work all the time. Hey, do you want to be a client? A client would be like, no, and avoid us. So we have to put on this farce that we're good. Things are great. Things are fantastic. And then it's eating away us inside. So what I commit to doing, and actually it's on my wall right here, it says eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. This is my home office. Every space I work, I have that up as a reminder of my life's purpose is to close this gap. And for entrepreneurs to acknowledge where we stand today and the struggles we are facing, but then I am so diligent in providing every solution I can to get out of that and then make that vision of financial freedom and personal freedom a reality.
So we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about your latest book. I've got it sitting here, and I can't wait to kind of dig in. You see, I've got some notes. I want to ask you some questions about some of that. But I want to ask before we go to break, what made you want to revise a book you had already written? I found that kind of interesting.
Yeah, I've done 2 of my books, Clockwork that you're looking at and Profit First. How that comes about is my publisher, it's Penguin Books, my publisher comes to me and says, hey, there's so much demand for this. Is there a way to improve it? After a book's been in circulation for a year or two, the feedback is wonderful because people are like, oh, here's where I'm struggling, here's where I'm not. So Clockwork is 60% new content. I call it 100% simplified. It's the same core structure, but I rejiggered the book to better support the roughly 100,000 businesses that already deployed it.
Yeah, because it was a much better read than the first time I read it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So,
well, thank you. That was my goal.
60% is a different book, right?
That's right.
I mean, a lot of times
it's a different book.
Yeah, people put out a revision and they'll change a couple things, and it's really just to boost sales. But for you to put this out and put so much work into it, that 60% is a different book is incredible.
Okay, Mike, we only got 30 seconds before we go to break. Can you guess which book is my favorite? Because I have read what is it, 8 books he's got here? Can you guess 8. Which one is my favorite?
If it ain't Profit First, it's going to be the Pumpkin Plan.
Yeah, you got me. Pumpkin Plan. You're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's just a phenomenal book. You did good on that. He crushed that, didn't he?
He did.
He crushed that.
He knows you.
Yeah. Let's take a break. Book. It is written by a phenomenal writer. I guess I get to say my favorite author. I get to do that. Mike Michaelowitz.
Hey, that feels good, Joe.
Mike Michaelowitz, you are my favorite author. I've officially made that decision today.
You're my favorite radio host. This is amazing.
Thank you so much, buddy, for being here. I really do appreciate it. So you talk about this book. You say about 60% of it's different. I could tell that when I reread this, right? It felt like a completely different book, and you kind of wanted to throw something at me when I said it was better than the first. But I think it's because there was so much more detail.
Yeah. Well, because there were so many practical applications. As I was sharing, as we cut to break, there's over 100,000 businesses that had deployed Clockwork. So I was able to go to case studies and see where people were getting stuck. Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things was with the first book, I didn't have sections for the employees on how to make the company efficient, just the leader. And the feedback was, how do I get my employees engaged? And one person actually said, I'm afraid to show them this book because they'll know my secrets. I'm like, that was never the intent. Mm-hmm. So the new book, as one example, every chapter has a section specifically for employees to use the system.
Let's just get right to the heart of this, okay? Let me get right to the heart of this book. Are you crazy? Yeah. When do you think I'm going to have 4 weeks to take off for a vacation? Are you out of your mind? Talk about that.
Yeah, and that's the response I want people to give me, because if you feel, Joe, that if anyone feels they can't take 4 weeks off from their business, that means the business is dependent upon them, and that's an at-risk business. What we have to distinguish is there is working in the business, an operator, and then there's owning a business. I'll give you an example. When I travel, admittedly, I stop by McDonald's a little too often, but I started a routine, and I invite you guys to do the same. I'll ask the cashier if I can speak with the owner. Not in one instance. I've done this now over 60 times. Not in one instance has the owner ever been there. The person in that glorified closet they call an office is the store manager. Mm-hmm. But the owner doesn't mean they're sitting on the beach drinking Mai Tais, maybe, but they're more likely doing strategic decision making. They're meeting with corporate. They're finding new locations. That's where true design and strategy happens. So if our business needs us flipping burgers, cooking fries, or rushing around like the manager, we aren't acting like an owner. So the last thing I want to share is, No, you're good. I was going to thank you for that advice, because I ended up selling a business recently because one of the partners was so entrenched in the mindset of the owners had to be in the business all the time. And through reading your books and listening to you and things like that, I've taken the approach of, I don't want to be a keystone in one of my companies. I'm going to delegate, set employees up to do the right things like that. And that different mindset between myself and a partner was a real issue. So I had to just sell and get out. But it's because of exactly what you just said, of the approach I was taking to being a business leader. If I don't want to be the owner that's in the middle of a company. That's a great realization, Ben, and a bold choice. I hope it's serving you. But to your point, there is a distinguishing difference between an owner-operator and a owner shareholder. And what I want to invite entrepreneurs to do is become shareholders. Now, a little context, and I'll tell you how to do it. Only 3% of the population ever starts a business and is able to maintain it sustainably for over 5 years. That means 3% of the world is creating all jobs for the other 97%.
Yeah.
Kindergarten, I had 30 students. That means one student started a business and maintains it successfully, and all the other students are looking for good jobs. So the job of an entrepreneur is to be a creator of jobs. That's something we got to remember. An entrepreneur doesn't do the job. The entrepreneur creates the job for people who want to work with good companies. Now, the other thing, the little technique I want to share is, and this is a little bit hard, even though it's simple, is start calling yourself a shareholder of a business to everybody, because it triggers an identity shift. So next time someone comes to you and says, "Hey, Ben, what do you do?" You say, "Oh, I'm a shareholder of a small business." "Hey, Joe, what do you do?" "Oh, I'm a shareholder in a radio show." When we say we're a shareholder, that person will say, "What do you mean?" And then we talk about shareholder values. Our job is to give strategic direction. Just like if you own stock in Ford, you vote for the board and you give strategic direction on, should we build this new building and campus and so forth. And you share in profitability. And that's what shareholders do. Direction and profitability. And as a small business owner, if we start calling ourselves a shareholder, we may start acting like that. And if we do, we are serving the business optimally.
So let's we don't have a lot of time, so you don't have to get into the details, right? But because I want everybody to buy this book, by the way.
And I'm going to. You're right, Joe. I'm probably going to be the first one to buy this.
That's right. That's right. So can you talk quickly about the Big Bang and then about the Big Promise? Because those two things to me are like the core. Once you get those, you kind of get the book.
Yeah. The Big Bang is an interpretation of Jim Collins' BHAG, which stands for Big Hairy Audacious Goal. I modified it because I found for small business owners, we need a couple other elements. The big stands for big, but bang, B stands for beautiful, A stands for audacious, N stands for noble goal. The beautiful and noble parts are critical. When we have purpose, if we know why we're doing what we're doing, we become unstoppable. So for example, my big bang is to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. This is what I do. And that gets me up in the morning, gets me excited to get to work. The big promise is the customer facing side. So my customers maybe don't care that I'm eradicating entrepreneurial poverty, but what they do care is I'm simplifying entrepreneurship. So the big promise is what you serve your customers most with. My books, my work is to simplify entrepreneurship. And if we distinguish those two things, we'll have a reason to come to work excited, and we'll have a core differentiator to keep offering our clientele.
So one more thing, and then I want to talk about your next project that you're getting ready to do. But you talk about the queen bee role. You talk about that in several of your books. Describe exactly what that is, because I'll be honest with you, this one is tricky for me, right? I struggle with this, right? So talk a little bit about that.
So hyperfast, I use a technique called biomimicry. You look at nature, and nature has solved problems over billions of years. Take those ideas, translate them to a business or personal application. In beehives, the queen bee produces eggs. Now, I'm not saying the queen bee is most important, but the role of producing eggs is what keeps the hive alive. So we need to identify in our business, what is the core role? It could be served by one individual, but as a business grows, often it's served by many individuals. Now, the interesting thing in a beehive is the queen bee, if she fails to produce eggs, she's removed from the hive and a new queen is spawned. In our business, we have to know that core competency, the equivalent of laying eggs, and then defend it at all costs and ensure that the best people, the best resources are allocated to it. If you excel at your queen bee role, your QBR, your business inherently excels.
And thank you so much. There's so much I want to talk about this book. We just don't have time to do it. The delegating and designing of the business, it's just, and deciding, that's such a great chapter in the book, and we just don't have time to dig into it because I want to talk about some. I want to say this. buy this book. It is phenomenal. Julie's going to put a link onto the book right now. You add the first 10 people that go to this link can get this book for free. Mike Mikowitz, he is by far my favorite author, period. It's official. I made it official. Please buy this. Clockwork, for those of you listening live on the radio. So, Mike, before we go, because we only got a couple of minutes, buddy, what is the next project that you're working on? Because we are ready for the next book.
We are.
Yeah. I just put the manuscript in for the final submission to my publisher. The book is called All In: How Great Leaders Build Unstoppable Teams. What I've done over the last, I want to say it's 6, maybe now it's 7 years, is study how do great teams come about, especially in small business, and dominate the competition. And I share all these techniques and strategies that are outside the box, stuff you probably never heard before. And I do want to share one just to give people a head start. The book comes out in January, but you can pre-order it now if you want. So All In: How Great Leaders Build Unstoppable Teams. And here's the technique: is instead of doing traditional interviews, which actually have a very low success rate in getting qualified people, run a workshop. Home Depot does this, and no one knows. Next time you see a Home Depot Come Build Your Birdhouse event where you go with your child or some children and you'll see parents and stuff working away, Home Depot is using that as a recruiting platform. They have a couple Home Depot employees there. They're guiding you through the process. Of course, they ingratiate you with the store. They want you to buy stuff, but they will tap you on the shoulder. If you're demonstrating interest and thirst for doing this work, they'll say, hey, you're so into this. You're helping other parents. Would you want to work at Home Depot? We can do the same thing. We can set up experiences, which are actually recruiting platforms for the most interested and thirsty individuals.
So, Mike, thank you so much. We've only got a minute. If you're on the book right now, I just dropped up his website. You can check that out. Julia has put All In on the website. She's also put the first 10 people get a free book. Mike, thank you. What is the final thing you'd like to say to small business people that are listening, Mike?
I've been saying small business is the backbone of the economy, and I ran the data, and it's not true. Small business is not the backbone of the economy. Small business is the economy. Every single business that exists today started as a small business. All those big businesses started out of a garage, or it was an idea that was invested in, but they started small. So I'm just wishing every entrepreneur success, because you are the economy.
Mike Mikowitz, he is the finest, my favorite author. Thank you, Mike Mikowitz. I appreciate it, buddy, for being on the show, buddy. We got to do this again.
Thanks, Mike.
We do. Thanks, guys.
If it's Friday morning, your business matters. We'll see you next week.
WSIC, Statesville, Lake Norman, North Charlotte.